From Silsbee, Texas, weighing in at 418 pounds, he is the world's strongest man, Mark Henry!
Never before has Mark Henry been as dangerous as he is now.
No one has been safe from the intensity and destruction that has followed Mark Henry.
I'd like to welcome all of you to the Hall of Fame!
That Hall of Pain is so memorable, but what do you think it is that made it so unique and special and successful? What did it bring out of you?
Because people were afraid.
In 2011, Mark Henry had one of the most unexpected late-career resurgences in WWE history, a run that turned a pretty underrated big man into the dominant main event monster heel everyone knew he could be. A run that would simply be known as the Hall of Pain. So what exactly happened? How did the world's strongest man suddenly find the best version of himself and reach the brass ring nearly 15 years into his wrestling career? In order for us to really see how much he still had left in the tank, let's go back to the 2011 WWE Draft. After spending most of his time in Monday Night Raw's tag division with little to no success, Mark Henry was sent to SmackDown as the 4th selection in the draft. On that same night's main event, Team Raw would face Team SmackDown in a 6-man tag team match in order to determine who gets the final draft pick of the night. During the match, however, Henry would turn on his partners, allowing Team Raw to pick up the victory and send Cena right back to Monday nights. Then, on the SmackDown after the Extreme Rules pay-per-view, Mark Henry, the Great Khali, and Randy Orton all interrupted Christian's championship celebration promo with each man vying for a title shot. This led to SmackDown GM Teddy Long leaving it up to fan chants to decide Christian's next challenger, which Randy Orton obviously won by a landslide. 2 weeks later, Henry would get another opportunity, competing in a triple threat match to determine the #1 contender for the World Heavyweight title, which he unfortunately lost yet again. And after weeks of bouncing around the card with no real direction, Henry suddenly found himself in a collision course with an unhinged Big Show who brutally assaulted him before their match could start. Little did everyone know that this unprovoked attack would light a fire in the world's strongest man, finally causing him to snap. As retaliation for what happened, Henry would interfere in Big Show's match against Alberto Del Rio at Capital Punishment, delivering an insane world's strongest slam to the 500-pound giant through the announce table. This was only the beginning of his rampage though, as he would also appear on the Raw after the pay-per-view, taking out Big Show's partner Kane with the same move. Mark would continue making Big Show's life a living hell for the next couple of weeks, interfering in his backstage interviews and costing him his matches. On the July 1st edition of SmackDown, Henry was on the verge of defeating Orton in a world title qualifying match when suddenly Big Show's music played, allowing the Viper to win via countout. And out of frustration, the big man would destroy the audio equipment and the technician for costing him a shot at the title. With the two behemoths consistently at each other's throats, a match was made pitting the world's strongest man against the world's largest athlete at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. Surprisingly, Mark Henry would make light work of the Big Show, delivering 2 world's strongest slams and a huge splash to get the victory. And just to make a statement, he would crush Big Show's leg with a steel chair, taking him out of action for a couple of months. He would later coin this act as inducting someone into the Hall of Pain. This newfound aggression wasn't just born out of a storyline purpose, however, as there was in fact a more real-life reason behind it. You see, in early 2011, Vince McMahon decided it would be funny to pull a prank on the big man during a random dark match after one of their shows. As Mark would recount the events, he was sent out to the ring expecting to face Sin Cara, but then after playing his music several times, the masked superstar never came out. Being legit pissed, Henry would then cut a promo, and that's when they started randomly playing the music of other superstars. Realizing that the rib was just pulled on him, the big man would storm backstage, only to find everyone gone with Vince pulling out of the area in his limo. Unsurprisingly, Mark would go ballistic, wrecking the entire backstage area and straight up deciding to quit his job right there and then. Fortunately, his wife was able to convince him to stay, with Vince pushing him to channel that rage on live television, which ended up being a really great idea. Anyway, after the pay-per-view, Mark Henry would go on an absolute tear, attempting to maim and destroy anyone in his path. It came to a point that Teddy Long had to intervene, preventing Henry from competing as he was too dangerous, only for Sheamus to then come out and pick a fight with the big man. This led to a match at SummerSlam, with Henry vanquishing the Celtic Warrior by driving him through the barricade to get a countout victory. Afterwards, he would resume his world title pursuits, this time winning a battle royale to become the #1 contender and face the World Heavyweight Champion at Night of Champions. The new challenger wouldn't waste time making his presence felt as he brutally dismantled the wounded Orton after a successful title defense against Christian inside a steel cage. Because of this, Teddy Long would enforce a no-contact rule for the champion and the challenger until their scheduled match. This didn't stop the big man from getting his pound of flesh anyway, assaulting Orton again after one of his matches. On the go-home SmackDown before the pay-per-view, the two would come face-to-face in an intense, cutting-edge segment that really hit hard on Henry's past failures.
I started here in the WWE in 1998. You were already a veteran here.
A brawl would break out afterwards, with the rest of the locker room having to separate the two, only for Henry to wreck everybody and stand tall in the end. At Night of Champions, Mark Henry showed the entire world that he's finally ready for the main event spotlight as he soundly defeated the Apex Predator to win the World Heavyweight Championship, his third only title win since debuting way back in 1996. With the title now in his possession, the world's strongest man was quickly put to the test when the COO of the company, Triple H, put him in a lumberjack match against Christian in his first defense. And even with the lumberjacks fully against him, Henry was able to weather the storm and retain his title. After the match, Randy would confront the champion, getting one over him for the first time in their feud. At the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, Orton and Henry went to war inside the unforgiving structure. Randy looked more vicious, more focused than their last outing, and even got the upper hand in the early stages of the match. However, the world's strongest man was just too damn unstoppable during this time, and he managed to defeat Orton for the second time in a row. The champ though wasn't satisfied with just the victory, as he tried taking out the Viper for good, only for Orton to escape at the last second and send Henry scurrying to the back with a flurry of chair shots. Following the pay-per-view, Big Show returned from his kayfabe injury, calling out the champion and outright demanding a title shot. Henry though would decline the challenge, claiming that he hasn't done anything to deserve a shot, to which the Giant responded by battering the champ and putting him through the announce table with a chokeslam. As a result, the SmackDown GM would make the match official: Mark Henry versus the Big Show for the World Heavyweight title at the Vengeance pay-per-view. The two would have several run-ins in the lead up to their match, with Big Show even knocking Henry's lights out on the Go Home SmackDown episode. And at the pay-per-view, Henry and Show would deliver an all-time OMG moment when the 400-pound monster superplexed a 400-pound giant off the top rope, destroying the ring and resulting in a no contest. After this though, Henry would deny Big Show a rematch, claiming that he handled his business already at Vengeance. He would then cross paths backstage with the recent Money in the Bank winner Daniel Bryan, who somehow irked the champion by looking at him the wrong way. And so he would demand for a non-title match to be made between him and Bryan on the November 4th episode of SmackDown. The Big Show would volunteer to be in Bryan's corner for the match, but it wouldn't get a proper finish as Show interjected himself and knocked the champ out with the WMD. That wasn't the end of it though, as Show would then urge Bryan to cash in his briefcase, only for Henry to take out both of his rivals and prevent the cash in. This stunt, however, would get the Big Show that title rematch he's been begging for, and at Survivor Series, the two super heavyweights clashed once again in another hoss fight that saw Big Show pulling out all the stops, even doing a Macho Man-esque flying elbow drop. Unfortunately, we wouldn't get another definitive outcome as Henry decided to go low, literally, by kicking Big Show in the crown jewels to cause a disqualification. He would then try to induct his rival into the Hall of Fame once again, but the Giant had other plans and pulled an Uno reverse card on the champ, crushing his leg with a steel chair instead. In order to sell the injury, Mark Henry came out on the SmackDown after the pay-per-view wearing a leg brace and claiming that he's not cleared to compete even though he wanted to. The Big Show would then confront the kayfabe injured champ and ended up knocking him out as Henry couldn't stop himself from running his mouth on the Giant. Suddenly, Daniel Bryan, like a real ultimate opportunist, decided to cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase on the fallen Henry and actually won the title, much to the crowd's adulation. The celebration wouldn't last long, however, as Teddy Long had to void the cash-in due to Henry being kayfabe injured. In spite of this, Bryan would later earn a proper title shot when he won a fatal 4-way match in the main event. And on the December 2nd episode of SmackDown, a not 100% Mark Henry was forced to defend his title against Daniel Bryan inside the steel cage. While Bryan came close to escaping the cage at some point, his dreams were crushed when the champ delivered the world's strongest slam off the top rope to retain his title. After this, Henry would refocus his attention back to his biggest rival, The Big Show, as they were scheduled for another rematch at the TLC pay-per-view, this time in a chairs match. In what would be their final singles encounter on a pay-per-view, Mark Henry and The Big Show surprisingly put on the weakest match of their heated rivalry, a 5-minute match that really didn't make use of the stipulation all too well. Big Show finally got his retribution, knocking Henry out to win the World Heavyweight Championship, a lackluster end to a really great title reign. Still in disbelief with the loss, Henry would assault the newly crowned champion after the match, only for Daniel Bryan to come out and pick the bones of his so-called friend, successfully cashing in his briefcase to win the title for real this time. This unforeseen betrayal would cause some tension between Bryan and Show, leading to a triple threat steel cage match for the title at Royal Rumble 2012. Unfortunately, Mark Henry was unable to recapture the belt, and on the February 3rd edition of SmackDown, he would get suspended indefinitely by Teddy Long after he put his hands on the GM for refusing to grant him a title rematch. He would return to action 2 weeks later, facing Sheamus in a losing effort. Things would go further downhill from here, as Mark was sort of stuck in storyline limbo, not really having any solid program coming into WrestleMania 28. And at the grandest stage of them all, he would find himself being lumped in a forgettable 12-man tag team match representing Team Johnny against Team Teddy to determine who will be the Raw and SmackDown GM, which they won. Post-Mania, Henry would get another title opportunity courtesy of John Laurinaitis when Punk was made to defend his WWE Championship against the big man in 3 consecutive weeks, all of which ended with Henry failing to win the gold. And after weeks of absence from WWE programming, Mark Henry announced on Twitter that he would undergo surgery, sidelining the big man for almost 9 months. Sadly, this also marked the beginning of the end for the Hall of Pain. While still being portrayed as a monster heel, he never quite reached the top again and bounced to several short feuds during this time. He did, however, give us one last iconic moment during the tail end of his heel run. On the June 17, 2013 episode of Raw, Mark Henry came out wearing a pink suit all teary-eyed as he cut an impassionate promo to formally announce his retirement from in-ring competition. Cheers would envelop the arena, with John Cena even handing the title to Henry as a sign of respect. But then, in one of the greatest swerves in WWE history, Mark Henry shocked everyone when he hit Cena with the world's strongest slam and said the iconic line,
I got a lot left in the tank!
Because of this, he would get a match at Money in the Bank for the WWE title, though he was unable to defeat Cena. He would finally turn face shortly after and wrestle until 2018, with his last match being at the Greatest Royal Rumble match. On the same year, he would also be inducted in the Hall of Fame while slowly transitioning into a backstage role. Henry would later jump ship to AEW in 2021, where he was part of their commentary team for the better part of 3 years. So how good was Mark Henry's Hall of Fame run actually? If I was to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. Let me explain why. Aside from the Summer of Punk, I think the Hall of Pain was one of the best things to have happened in 2011. While its peak might have only lasted for several months, it managed to turn Mark Henry into the guy. The top dog, so to speak, of Friday Night SmackDown. He made everyone, and I mean everyone, look like an underdog next to him. Whether it's Big Show, Kane, or even Randy Orton. And without the Hall of Pain, I don't think we'd remember Mark as fondly as we do now. Heck, I don't even think he would have been inducted into the Hall of Fame as early as 2018 if it didn't happen. But what did you think of the Hall of Fame? Let me know in the comments below. And if you wanna see more How Good videos, check out the next one right here. See you there.